All right. We're moving on in Rise of the Sith to a two-issue miniseries called Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan Aurorient Express, not to be mistaken with the Orient Express, which this is a parody of. Yes, that's right. This steaming pile of trash is a comedy comic. It's written by Mike Kennedy with pencils by Lucas Maragon and ink by Howard Shum. Colors by Dan Jacobson. Anyway, so this is a two-issue mini that happens sometime around in Jedi Apprentice, just based on Obi-Wan looks like a child. He doesn't move like he did in like his years in the first like 12, 13 Jedi Apprentice books. So it leads me to believe this happens in the gap between books 13 and 14. Because there's a 3-year time gap where we're supposed to put like several things. There's like a Tales story in here that I'll get to eventually that goes in that. The TCW backstory for him and Duchess Satine, I think, is thought to be in this. Although it's never explicitly said, I think it's supposed to be in this age gap. This like 3-year gap from when he was 13 to when he was 16. Honestly, I'd put this probably right after the 13th Jedi Apprentice book. So Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are basically airdropped to a travel liner that's got bombs on it, and everyone's out to get everyone, and it's so zany and funny, and all the characters are all wacky. They all suck. Every character in this, with the exception of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, sucks. Like, they're not funny. There is so many attempts at comedy in these two issues that fall flat. Like, it just was miserable to read. And I've thought that for many years. In fact, this is the second attempt from Dark Horse to capitalize on Jedi Apprentice, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan. We'll talk about next time I get to this omnibus, about Last Stand on Ord Mantell, which came out from 2000 to 2001. This came out February and May of 2002. There was a several month gap between these two issues. Probably because no one cared. It's so bad. It's so bad it never got printed on its own. It never got a trade. Like with Last Stand on Ord Mantell, we had to wait till the Dark Horse Rise of the Sith omnibus to ever read these. In fact, I read these. I picked up the Rise of the Sith omnibus on a whim one day. It was one of the early omnibuses. I mean, the first 3 were X-Wing Rogue Squadron. After that, I think this came out right when Tales of the Jedi's first omnibus came out through Dark Horse. Those little white omnibuses, you all know. Well, here. I have an Indiana Jones one. It's the same format. They look like this. You know, they're about the size of a sci-fi book club hardcover. The great way to read a bunch of comics for $25. You know, these were a good deal back in the day. And a lot of times Dark Horse would focus on stuff that either never got taken to trade or only got printed once in trade paperbacks. So it was nice to get those back in like the late 2000s, early 2010s, because they eventually stopped making those, and it was a shame. It was really a shame. But yeah, that was it was a good way to collect things, and it was how I read this the first time, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I liked it was a really young Obi-Wan, not as young as he is in the first like 13 Jedi Apprentice books, but he's right at that age. He moves around more like he did in the movies, which makes this kind of funky. I get why they put this like before Last Stand on Ord Mantell, because he's clearly older in that. Which that has its own set of issues that I will talk about when I get to reviewing those issues. Get it? I made a joke. But this is horrible. It's utterly horrible. And once again, with this hardcover omnibus, if you want to skip this, go right ahead. It doesn't lead to anything. There's no continuity, as far as I know, between this and any other Star Wars stories. It's never brought up again. Um, it's not worth your time. I think it's worse than Jedi the Dark Side. I really do. Because at least Jedi the Dark Side had like strong bones from what Jude Watson put in one of her books. This has nothing. It's a parody of the Hercule Poirot's adventure on the Orient Express, the Murder on the Orient Express. Um, but just I don't know. Is it written for kids? Because kids wouldn't get that joke. Is it written for adults? Because it has a little adult humor thrown throughout. So there's a few sex jokes that are like in there, and it's weird. But that's not. It's very lowbrow, dumb. I don't think Star Wars fans like it. I mean, if you really have to read everything, every adventure that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan had before Phantom Menace, then I guess read this. I give it a 1 out of 5. It's not worth your time to check out. The art's hideous. Everything's hideous. It may be, with the exception of the Tales comics in this omnibus, it may be the worst story. But I don't know. We do have Phantom Menace adventures in here, and you'll understand what I mean when I get to that.